All right, last week was tough, lads. Last week was very tough. I'm not gonna lie, it was one of the tougher weeks I've had with building this course and building this program and just life in general. I don't know what to say. Overwhelm got me pretty decently last week. And yeah, it made things tough. So I want to cover a little bit about what happened last week to get me to that point of overwhelm and what I did to sort of get back on track and back into the momentum, back into the swing of things that you could do to help yourself if you feel overwhelmed with your current situation, whether that's running an SMMA or building a course or whatever. Again, I've just had a lot of experience with this, right, guys? Over the last 8.5 years, this isn't the first time I've ever felt overwhelmed with something. And I think it's perfectly okay to feel overwhelmed. I think that's just a part of spinning a lot of plates. But I think what's a trap for young players out there in this space, in this game, is not being able to recover once they feel overwhelmed and then letting the overwhelm take over, getting in their own head and not starting again, or starting again when it's too late, when they've done irreversible damage to what they're doing. So let me wheel back. Let's give you a bit of a recap on what happened and why last week was so shit from an overwhelm perspective. So the program that I've been building, it's been about a month and a half now, and the progress has been slower than I even personally expected it to be. I'm in this conundrum, lads. I want to build the best course on the internet when it comes to operations and service delivery. And as you guys know, I have an incredibly high standard of myself. So when I say I'm going to do something like that, I'm going to do everything I can to make it happen. But the problem with that is that there's so much that I want to cover off that it almost feels like an insurmountable task almost all the time. And the way I've been handling that is just by doing what I immediately think needs to happen in the group, right? So we got this little group of people that have pre-bought the program, there's 35 really awesome guys in there. And I've been just focusing on the things that I think that they need, which are going to be part of the total program, but necessarily aren't in sequential order. And there's been a few rumblings in the group about how it's hard to navigate because we are just piecemealing this so much. And I think the reason I've been piecemealing it is because A, I'm sort of prioritizing the things I think they need, but B, it was mainly a pain avoidance thing on my behalf, I think. I was completely overwhelmed with the thought of making this course. And so I was focusing on the things that were very easy for me to figure out, get done, and provide results for guys with. And admittedly, they're getting amazing results with some of the things that I've been sharing, like communication and cadences and referrals. That is all stuff they need. But it's now getting to the point where the rubber meets the road and it's in time to like strap up my bootstraps and get the job done, which I mentally had prepared for. But what I hadn't prepared for was the agency getting in the way as well, and issues popping up in the agency, and a client not being as happy as I thought they were. All these little niggly things come together in combination with this massive elephant that I've got to take small chunks out of to get this job done for the course. It all got to me. It was last week, probably Thursday, I was completely utterly overwhelmed. The combination of being in my little school group and answering Loom videos and the rumblings of people maybe not happy with the way I've gone about the course, and one of the guys mentioning that, you know, he's at a different level and he's not vibing with everyone else as much as he thought he would, and a client not being happy, and life getting in the way, the stress of moving to Penang permanently. It all got to me. And I was completely, utterly overwhelmed to the point where inaction was starting to take hold. And this is where a lot of you get to, and then maybe don't have a strategy to get out of that. So I'm lucky, like I said, over a long period of time, I've developed strategies that help with this. And I'm going to share how I got out of that hole and how it's now Tuesday and I'm back to work, fully focused, ready to do the job. And like I said, it's completely okay if you feel overwhelmed. The main thing is you need to get back on track when you do feel overwhelmed. And this is how I go about it. So essentially what I do when I feel completely overwhelmed is I get a notebook and I move away from everything, again, step up, and I go for a walk, or I just like move away from my computers, move away from the technology, and I start data dumping every single possible thing I can think of that I need to get done. Because generally the overwhelm comes from having multiple things in all different directions that maybe you haven't accounted for. So if you go and document all that down on a piece of paper, and I'd advise you not to do this on a computer, it's way better to do this in a pen and paper. Just document every single thing down. Spend 2 hours just data dumping. Now, it's not all going to come to you in one hit. You're going to have to like spend an hour or two just doing something else, whether it's playing an Xbox or doing something, and then something will come to you. Pause, write it down. You'll end up with a list of 30 or 40 different things that are creating this overwhelm in your head. Once you've got that list of 30 or 40 things that are creating that overwhelm in your head, what I want you to do is go and get some Post-it notes. Physically go to an office store and get some Post-it notes and write every single thing down on a Post-it note and get a wall and stick them all on a wall, okay? So you want to, I know this sounds like a lot of work, but it helps a lot. Get them, stick them all on a wall, so you'll have 30 or 40 Post-it notes on a wall. Then what you're going to do is you're basically going to draw a line down the middle, right? And the goal of this line is to separate the things that are in your control versus the things that are out of your control. Okay, so the things that are in your control, you're going to put to the right, and the things that are completely out of your control, you're going to put to the left. So one of the things to me in this group that was creating a lot of anxiety for me was the fact that this guy mentioned in the group that he didn't want the accountability, but also that he's not feeling the vibe as much because he's at a different level to everyone else in the group. And that's a challenge for me, because it's like, how do you build a course that tailors for multiple people in multiple different aspects and different levels of their agency? So I took that and put that to the left, which is something that's out of my control. I can't physically control that. I can't control the way he feels given the current situation we're in. There's nothing I can do immediately that will fix that. So there's actually no use worrying about it right now. So there's a whole bunch of things. If you were to write down 30 or 40 things, there'll be at least 10 or 20 of those things that are out of your control. It might be the fact that your mum and dad aren't happy with you because you've got rent due. Put that, it's out of your control. There's nothing you can do about it. That's like a hard timeline. It's going to exist whether you worry about it or not. So you put that to the left, and then you put all the things you have control over on the right-hand side. So for me, for instance, it was laying out this course in a better format. It was starting this course from a start to finish. It was programming this course properly so people had a better understanding of what's coming. That's all stuff I had control of. So I dumped all that on a book, and then Post-it notes, put it on the wall, put it to one side. Then from there, you're going to bucket things into different buckets. So let's say, for instance, you had 40 things, 20 things went into things you have no control of, 20 things went into things you have control of. The 20 things you have control of, there are buckets that you can put each one of these things into. So for me, for instance, let's use an example. So I had a client that was complaining. Well, that's in the bucket of running the agency. So I put that in there. The programming of the course, I put into the course. So there was 3 or 4 things that went into that bucket. The whole fact that we're moving to Penang and we've got to organize visas and stuff like that, that went into life bucket. So I ended up with 4 buckets. I moved everything in there. The course had 6 things in it. The life had 4 things in it, and so on and so forth. Split them up. And then you tackle each one of those buckets by themselves. And that's the secret to getting over the overwhelm, is to break down the big swirling mess of shit in your head and breaking up into smaller steps so you can start tackling them one by one. So from there, I just dedicated a day to unpacking and unraveling the course so it can be better articulated and so I can know what I need to get done, right? Because it is very overwhelming building a course. That is what I'm learning. It's incredibly overwhelming. Even though I have pretty much it all there and I've done it and it's lived experiences, so it should be easy. It's actually hard sometimes to explain that stuff, and it's sometimes easier not to take action at all, going, oh, I've got time to do this, than to go, actually, the reason I'm not doing it is because I am procrastinating because I feel overwhelmed with the thought of having to do it. So after I laid all this out, I seen the 6 things I need to get done for the course to get the course back on track, and then I just programmed time in my time blocking to do them. And I just sat there and I focused on those and didn't focus on anything else. I literally turned everything else off around me and just focused on those immediate problems in front of me and tackled them one at a time. So one of the problems I had to tackle was laying out the program in a better way with what's in the actual modules, so that I get a better idea of what's in them, so it's easier to start them, and then everyone else gets an idea as well. I also had to lay out the program in a timeline so people could see it. that was something else I had to do. And once I did that, the overwhelm disappeared and I was ready to tackle the problems one by one. So yeah, there's a couple of things there. I think if you are feeling overwhelmed, that is by far the best way to get from feeling overwhelmed to not feeling overwhelmed anymore, is by dumping everything you know on a piece of paper, laying it out on a whiteboard or on a wall with post-it notes, breaking it up into things you have control over and not control over, and then breaking them into buckets and focusing on one bucket at a time. Because the problem with overwhelm is that the longer you leave it, the longer you procrastinate on solving it and getting on top of it, the worse the overwhelm gets, the more that piles up behind it, and your fight or flight reflex will take hold. You'll either fight back or you'll fold and you'll crumble under the pressure. So that's how I handled the overwhelm of this week. I'm happy to say that the course is now back on track. I was able to lay out exactly what's going to be in the program in a timeline, and the response to that has been very good. And I've also been able to articulate the way I want to do it and focus less on the specific needs of individuals and more on okay, well, what will be the best for the greater good? Well, it'll be getting all the foundations done in one hit, as opposed to trying to do little bits and pieces to keep certain people happy in the group. So I was able to create that clarity. I was able to get back from the overwhelm. I was able to think strategically. I was able to come up with an outcome and keep this course going and fulfill my commitment. So yeah, overall, last week was a bit of a weird one. It doesn't happen to me often, but it does happen. And I'm just glad I've got the strategies in place to be able to come back from that ledge, because like I said, the worst case scenario is that you let the overwhelm take over and you don't get to it. You just avoid it for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden it becomes a really, really big problem because you have people wanting to leave you, say for instance, as an agency. But yeah, just wanted to give everyone an update on what's happening with this course. So now, a bit of an update. I really pushed hard yesterday. I even went to a co-working space yesterday, pushed hard and got several modules done for the course because I had it all laid out and the overwhelm was gone. So I was able just to tackle it one thing at a time and do it in the way I wanted to do it, as opposed to appeasing others. And that really helped with getting what I needed to done because I was able to work in my zone of genius in a way that I wanted to work, as opposed to going, oh, I'm moving around, I'm switching around, I'm worried about whether people are getting value or not. And now I'm a little bit less worried about whether people are getting value or not, because I know they are, and more worried about let's get this stuff out so people can get value from the course. And that's been really, really helpful. So yeah, so that's basically my week in a nutshell. If you're feeling overwhelmed, hopefully this helps you, because it's not an easy thing to deal with. And just remember that the longer you leave it, if you're feeling overwhelmed, the longer you leave it, the worse it's going to get for you. So you really want to get on top of it. And the best thing you can do is just to start the process and dump everything you're thinking about down on a piece of paper and then work back from that. So guys, hopefully you found that helpful. I'll catch you in the next vlog.